Chronopunk, a novel, Epilogue. The novel is published now. It's available. There's a website with all the episodes. There's a bunch of YouTube videos that accompany the episodes. So please check out the website. The link is in the show notes. I just want to say a few things now. This is a voice from the author about the novel and about the actual time that we live in right now. The novel was started in early 2024 and inspired by the political and economic events that led to that particular time in U.S. and global history. What I mean with that is that we were, I would say, definitely looking. We're very close to the abyss as far as Western values are concerned, such as liberty, freedom of speech, human rights, academic freedom. Those things were, to say it mildly, in jeopardy, if not even under attack. And the view of the author is that that is tightly related to the fact that the United States has become the credit card of the world. In other words, we have been amassing massive amounts of debt, living above our means, and we've created a culture of truth deniers, which is another word to say that if you don't have constraints, if you don't have economic constraints, or even worse, if you have the impression that you don't have economic constraints, then there is a risk that a society derails into what the US was becoming. And for lack of a better word, I called it an Orwellian nightmare. And what I mean with that is that we have a lot of traces. We still have, by the way. I mean, this is part of the purpose of this epilogue, is to put this all in context where we are today, which is sort of spring 2025. But things have gotten better, just to give away the punchline here. But nevertheless, I'm trying to give the reader a little bit of a sense for where the author is coming from. Why was this novel written in the first place? And again, we lived through COVID, and then we lived through a time of cancel culture in the US. The author lives in California in the US, so that is the primary viewpoint. But you could extrapolate this to Europe or generally the Western world, whether it's Australia or Canada, places like that. So we lived through COVID, and then we have this cancel culture, woke extremism in the United States. For example, there was a conference at Stanford in 2022, which was meant to proliferate academic freedom. So the purpose of the conference, organized by John Cochrane, one of their economics professors, and others, was to proliferate academic freedom, something you might think is common sense and happens at US campuses all the time. And that conference was sabotaged by Stanford faculty, by Stanford leadership. There were protests against it. People were invited, faculty were invited. They refused to come out of fear for their personal safety and jobs and all that kind of stuff. And the reason was because academic freedom was associated with anti-woke, or not for whatever woke stood for or still stands for, but back then was more extreme. Things like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, all kinds of other things that were associated with the world in academics. In other words, you weren't free to say almost anything which wasn't sanctioned by the cabal of extremists that were taking over U.S. educational institutions. So this is just one example, and the novel is not about academic freedom. So the novel is about, just to give very quickly, please go read the synopsis, read the novel. But what the novel is about is that we are in 2064. the society is on the brink of collapse. American society is entrenched with corruption. Debt is multiple times of GDP. Interest rate payments alone are way more than any kind of entitlement payments. Basically, the country is on the brink of bankruptcy. So what the leaders decide, there's a congressional commission uh, to use some of the technology which is available to that society, and that is time travel technology, to send back an operative to 2006. And the operative, the main character of the novel, Moody, is preparing a lawsuit to attack the Federal Reserve, which will be starting quantitative easing in 2008 or 2009, something along those lines, when the U.S. financial crisis hit after the Lehman collapse. So what the novel is saying here, or what the author is trying to say, is that with the beginning of quantitative easing, that was the stroke that broke the camel's back, because once you take that constraint away, once you let the Federal Reserve, the fiat institution, the money printing press, basically interfere with the economy through saving banks directly, then all bets are off. And that's really what we've witnessed. That's not fiction, that is real. The US debt and deficits have been growing steadily since then. And the reason is because before that, even though the Fed was established, even though Nixon went off the gold standard, there was still this concept that the Federal Reserve is not supposed to interfere in the real economy by saving businesses, or in other words, the arbiter was not supposed to become a player. And with Ben Bernanke, that changed. He became a player, and with that, for example, Goldman Sachs stock since 2008 has gone up 6 times, but Wells Fargo hasn't. And so, I mean, it's just one example. Like, if you're part of the cabal of Northeastern elites, which is a mix of politicians, consultants in DC, investment bankers, and throw in there also management consultants, like this cabal of elites, I call them paper pushers, then you do well. Everybody else is suffering, because the largest tax on humanity always has been, since the beginning of time, at least human time, it has been inflation. That has always been the worst type of tax. It's the only tax that politicians get away with, mostly because it's very difficult to discern. But once it hits, it's kind of like a cancer. Once it metastasizes, it's you can't stop it. So that's inflation, and that's what happened. So Moody, the operative, is supposed to go back and start a lawsuit against the Federal Reserve. So most of the bulk of the novel is about that. So the author is making an effort, hopefully a successful effort, to make this entertaining. This is not a book about moral hazard and economic concepts such as deficits or things like that. This is a book about love, about fighting, about sweat, tears, rock and roll, music. There's a lot of music in the book. There is hopefully interesting characters are built, idiosyncratic characters. So the author's trying to make this an entertaining novel embedded in the economic story of the time. And then there is a punchline at the end where we sort of answer the big question of the novel, which is, if you're an advanced technology, which technology would you gift your past to save the future? In other words, if you were able to go back from, let's say, 2060 back to 2006, what technology would you actually bring back? Or if you were able today, let's say 2025, which technology would you bring back to 1950? And the answer is, we don't actually bring back a technology, we're going to bring back an idea. And the main concept is knowledge creation. That is what we're trying to preserve. So we'll bring back an idea that will preserve knowledge creation. Now, without giving away too much, what happens is, I think I can say that here, The author, the punchline is that the author will not succeed with the lawsuit, obviously, because we are living now in a time when QE actually happened. But there's something else that happened, and that is what the punchline is of the novel. I don't want to give it away. Read the novel. What I want to say is now a few things about where we are today and how things have changed. So there's a bit of a cultural change that came with the election of Donald Trump. And obviously that was a zeitgeist. That wasn't just a win and then everything changed. There was definitely a zeitgeist before already changing. People, particularly in the academic world, realized that we were going too far on the discrimination and censorship line, that is not healthy for Western societies. We can't become like China or North Korea. And we opened up a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. So that might bring some questions. And then with the election of Donald Trump, I think because now we have a federal backing of what I call back to truth seeking and away from truth denier. Because what woke really is, or any kind of extreme movement like that, is a truth denier movement. You deny the truth, which is something that is objective and universal. We humans might not be able to see it. I'm a Popperian when it comes to that. So we will always be scratching the surface of truth, but there is an objective truth out there. So we are not going to succumb to the totalitarian nightmare of relativism, where there's no truth and it's just all about power and interpretation of words. We're not Wittgensteinian or Feyerabendian, where we just basically think that science and truth seeking is just a game of words and a game of play. It's not like that at all. We can get closer to the truth. There's a line in the novel that says, facts are dependent on trajectories, but knowledge is not. Just to give a little bit of background, we're using some fictional ideas such as time travel, multiverse, trajectories as a philosophical backbone of the novel. So in other words, we basically are invoking the Everettian multiverse interpretation of quantum mechanics as a backbone of the book. So there are different multiverses. There is knowledge which copies itself throughout the multiverse, and that type of knowledge which copies itself is not trajectory dependent, but facts are. That's the difference between facts and truth. A fact is, for example, the fact is the birth of Abe Lincoln, for example. That's a fact, but that's only in that particular trajectory. Versus knowledge, universal knowledge, such as the idea that the laws of physics are universal, that gravity as we know it here on Earth is universal across any kind of body, any kind of mass, any kind of whatever, or that the speed of light is whatever it is. Like, these things are universal. They can't be changed, at least not in our universe. They might change in other universes because we could have different laws of physics in different universes. But in our universe, as we know it, or as we are able to know it, they're not able. They're given. So these are objective truths that we abide to. Now, we could question that too, and there is a whole chapter about Gödel and Everett, which talks about this. So I think we're daring to go into philosophical and physical concepts that are, in our opinion, relatively new and interesting to the author. So hopefully they resonate with the readership. The fact that Everett is sort of, I would say, Everett is justifying Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So if you can have something that is true, but you can't prove it within the system. So you need something from the outside that can prove the system, and that is Everettian multiverse interpretation of quantum mechanics. We then throw in dark matter as sort of the glue which ties together the several multiverses. In other words, we are actually able to we see we were able to test the multiverse theory through dark matter. That is a conjecture, that is fiction, that has not been proven at all. This is not scientific. Just want to caveat that, but it's just something that the author threw in as a concept, as an idea, that we might be able to maybe test for multiverse interpretation of quantum mechanics without even being able to observe it. So back to where we are today. So we are today in a time when I would say definitely truth-seeking is back de jour, is en vogue. We are looking for truth in several ways. For example, Donald Trump issued an executive order. We want to build nice buildings again. We want to build beautiful buildings. Now, you might say, what does that have to do with truth? But I think the brutalist architecture of the last couple of decades, the modern architecture, modern art in general, the idea that we put a detergent in an art gallery and call it art, all of these things were manifestations of the same destructive forces of Western society, which were that we basically kill our heritage, our human heritage of beauty, of truth, because beauty is an objective truth as much as the laws of physics are. And by killing that, by putting ugly buildings in our cities, by putting ugly anything anywhere, we're sort of killing that. And I think this reconstruction, as people call it, for example, I just listened to a seminar at Ralston College about the Renaissance, about the modern Renaissance, and I think I resonate with that. I think we're in a reconstruction period, and in a Renaissance period, in a true sense that we had the barbarians at the gates, and now we're rebuilding the pillars of Western society, which are built on Greek philosophy, Roman law, and Christian humanity, as Italian Prime Minister Meloni says it. I'm happy with that definition of Western values, which is one way to live. I do acknowledge that, let's say in China, they have different types of philosophies and different types of laws, and that's fine. And I think we can compete with those societies. But we here in the West, we're much better served at preserving our Western values, which have survived over millennia, and build on them. That doesn't mean we need to be discriminative towards, ex-colonial societies or anything like that. This is not a political statement by the author at all. I also don't want to go into politics, but I think in order to improve the world for us here, for us citizens, and everybody else for that matter, we're much better served in abiding to our Western values. And Chronopunk is an attempt to show what money and economics can do to help either build that or destroy it, either, depending on which side of the equation you stand. There is a whole chapter of instant gratification on the problem that we are facing right now in Western society, which is that we might want to improve, we might want to change, but we can't, because the moment the markets come down, the moment somebody's trust fund gets cut, somebody's slush fund in Washington gets cut, as we saw with the Department of Government Efficiency, the moment they cut something, the moment somebody in Washington who has been, either stealing or defrauding the government gets cut, the next thing we have is paid protesters in the streets, massive opposition, things like that happening. So it's very difficult to do. And the solution, actually, Chronopunk offers the solution. And again, I don't want to give away the punchline here. Read the novel. There is a solution. I just want to maybe tease a little bit. If you can't make money hard, then we need a new money. And that's the solution. Please read the novel. So I think to summarize, what we're trying to say here is that we are on a path to improvement, but we haven't solved the problem. The big problem, in the end, it is a waste of money and massive deficits and a decline of a society that lives above its means. And that has to be stopped. It can only be stopped with hard money. We're on the path to it. We have technologies now that allow us to do this. I think the Trump administration is a small sliver of hope. they're unfortunately not executing very well, so they're making big mistakes. And to be fair, also what they're trying to achieve, when I say they, it's not just the president, but also his cabinet and all the people around this movement, whether it's commentators, philosophers, academics. It's a big task because you have an entrenched elite around the US and the world, but particularly the US, which doesn't want to give up their privileges. The academic institutions in the United States are entrenched elites that have been living above their means. For example, the scientific output of the United States, the productivity of scientific output has been declining steadily because the system has become more and more corrupt. We need to change that. Our businesses have become just incremental fraudsters. Fraudsters is too much of a word. I would say incremental grifters. So instead of innovating, taking risk, persisting, working hard, trying to change existing markets, bringing in new technologies that democratize the world, make it make things better, more accessible for more people at lower cost, we are going in the opposite direction in most of our economy. Not everything. We have companies like Tesla and SpaceX and NVIDIA and Anduril and many others that are actually bringing in deflationary pressure into the economy, like bringing in technologies which make lives better and easier. But then we have sectors like healthcare, academia, and housing, where everything gets more and more expensive all the time. And that's because there is a lack of competition and a lack of innovation. And that is where our elites are entrenched. And it's very difficult to fight that. So hard money can take care of some of that. But in the end, of course, we also have to, we just have to do the work. So we are on a path of improvement. But I still think, even though we had a change of the political climate in the US, we still are way in the trenches. We still need to fight hard, and there is a lot of work to be done. So there's hope. Hopefully, Chronopunk can give provide a little bit of contribution to this movement, and with that, I wanna sanction this project. Hopefully, it has its effect on the readership. It opens eyes for people, brings some of the maybe non-economists and non-Wall Street people who understand, who don't have a close understanding of money and moral hazard and deficits and things. Hopefully it brings them closer to the problem of what free money does to society. For everybody else, hopefully it's an entertaining story about hope and about love and about doing the right thing. Thank you.